Hello everyone, let me know if you can hear me okay. Welcome to another live. I'm Alicia if it's your first time joining one of our lives here at Stretch It. And today's topic is glutes and flexibility, which is going to be a fun topic to cover. Also, if you would like a free class on us entirely, make sure you direct message DM the Stretch It app account the word live. And there's no need to register, to pay, to download. You'll just get it quick and easy in your DMs in the reply. And our middle split challenge starts tomorrow. Yay! If you're into that, but it's a lot of fun. Challenges are nice as they are an incentive for accountability, a community building, great benefits to challenges, yeah? But today we are talking glutes and flexibility. I like to reserve some time at the beginning of our lives for any questions or hellos, whatever you would like to share in the comments here. Not going to be a follow along, as more so it's going to be like a lecture / demo, as I will show you several examples when it comes to glutes and flexibility training, and specifically back bend training, as that is a topic that I think there's a lot of confusion still surrounding it. The age-old question, should you contract your glutes or not when back bending, and all sorts of stuff. So that'll be interesting to cover. And of course, lives allow for an opportunity for you to ask a question in real time. Well, we're trying to answer questions as it pertains to this topic. Anything about my leg hurts or something hurts, I'm just not qualified to address because I'm not a medical professional, nor am I a physical therapist. So I'm afraid the questions will have to be more so about flexibility technique and in that realm, and specifically as it pertains to glutes and flexibility training. So that will be it. And again, just waiting for everyone to get comfy, to come on in. Cool. All right. I'm just gonna start yapping. I want to start yapping because just to cover the groundwork for this topic. When it comes to glutes, it's obvious that yes, the stronger you are, the more people say stable your flexibility training will be, the shapes will be, and specifically in back bend training. The foundation for back bends starts at your hips, specifically hip extension. That's when your hips, for lack of a technical term, push forward. Now, what naturally happens when your hips extend, your glutes have to contract, right? It will be awfully difficult to try to extend your hip without contracting your glutes in a meaningful degree. And you might even discover that the more you contract your glutes and drive them forward, the more open your hip or more hip extension you'll be able to achieve. I'm sure you've probably heard somewhere down the line with the Cobra where people would say, relax. And you don't want to relax in a back bend or an extension. You are eccentrically contracting, meaning you're lengthening while you're contracting the front part of the back bend, and that is your hips and your abdomen to some extent, to a lot of extent actually. And you should squeeze your glutes because that is going to support your extension effort. Now, it might feel not as significant when you're on the floor, But when you're standing up, you might want to squeeze your, thank you AI, you might want to squeeze your tush. Because that's what's going to keep you from falling. And the example again is this. If you just practice kind of sinking into your back bend, this is not, I use the word active in that you're not fully engaged in the shape, right? If you just relax your glutes and then you want to bring that to standing, but you haven't conditioned your glutes to contract and drive forward and actually hold the shape up, the minute you start going back, it's going to feel really scary because you haven't taught yourself to contract your glutes in a way that's going to support that extension. Because you've been on the floor this entire time not squeezing. And it's not just about the squeezing, right? Because something I've noticed too when people practice back bends, if they practice on their knees, they'll squeeze their glute, but they won't drive them forward. You have to contract and push. It's actually more dynamic than one would think. And that's more towards the low spine and important that you engage your hips in a way that's going to support low back extension, where the brunt of the back bend will take place. Because if you look at your vertebrae, the lumbar part of your spine, the largest bones rest there with the bigger spaces between the vertebrae. And then as you climb up the spine, the spaces get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's why, on average, people have more extension potential in the lumbar part of their spine. Now, if we're talking about the middle back, you technically don't need to contract your glutes or need to think about your glutes at all when you're targeting the middle back. And that's because if I keep my butt here and I try to target the middle part of my spine, I'm actually flexing my hips. So we're going from the extended position into a flex position in order to target the middle and upper back. And you can even feel that when trying to practice upper and middle back stretches on the wall. My butt is back. It's not here. This is where it's hard to feel, and I think people have a hard time in general, my apologies, grabbing a block here so I could better demonstrate this on the floor. When they try to separate their middle and lower back, it can be tough if your middle back is tight. And one way I like to emphasize middle back and separate that effort from low spine extension is to use blocks so that we take the low back, the hips out of it entirely. You elevate the low back, you elevate the middle spine, and this is where you can actually feel the middle part of your back extend without squeezing your tush. You can see my bum is resting on the floor. So of course it's not going to contract in the same way as it will when starting a bridge from the hips up. Specific exercises, the lunge, the classic lunge. And just as I demonstrated, butt contracts when extending, naturally that means your tush is going to contract in a low lunge position. You don't want your butt to feel soft in a low lunge. You want to drive that hip forward and try to get that hip as open as you can. And naturally it will contract more if you try to straighten that back knee. You got to squeeze your tush. There's no way around it. Try doing that without squeezing your tush. Good luck. Good luck. Now, this isn't to say that You only need back bending to strengthen your glutes. No. You will need to add load to your training, to your weightlifting, in order to make your butt stronger. And your butt muscles, huge region, one of the strongest muscles in your body. So that's why it's hard to convince me that doing something like a donkey kick is going to strengthen your glute. Why? Why will your glutes grow or get strong from pushing air? They won't. Even if you add a 2-pound ankle weight, they will not. Even if you add a 5-pound ankle weight, they will not. And your retort might be, well, Alicia, I feel it. Well, that means you have a weak behind. And you have to start from the ground up. It's okay to start with donkey kicks if you haven't done a glute exercise in your entire life. So perhaps it's a great starting point to get connected with your glutes and actually feel what they're doing. Great. But if you really want to get your glutes strong, hip extension, the classic hip thrust, strengthening in the shortened position, and then of course in the lengthened position, lunges and squats. Okay? And also hinges, RDLs, good mornings. If you want your behind to get stronger, and you also want to get it strong in various degrees, again, in the shortened position and in the lengthened position, meaning you want your glutes to produce force in the bottom position, squatting, bottom position, lunging, bottom position, RDLs, and of course, the shortened position, hip thrusts. You'll notice that the stronger of a contraction you can express, the more of a hip extension you'll be able to achieve. Yay! Yay! And the stronger your body is, it's going to give you that range of motion. What's the word I want to look? Not a word, but a phrase. When you stretch and you feel your body hold back, that's a protective mechanism, because it's like we haven't been in that range of motion yet, so your nervous system puts a hold on those efforts because it's not quite sure what's going to happen, right? It's not going to let you just have all the range of motion you want without the appropriate control. So that's why it's important to create an environment to strengthen your tissues in a way that lets your nervous system know, well, actually, I'll be able to handle this end range, but let's work on it slowly. And then before you know it, you'll notice, oh yeah, stronger glutes, they make my back feel great. They offer better support for your low spine, especially as you practice deeper back bends. And this is why some individuals run into issues where they claim that they're hypermobile or super flexible. So yes, that could be an issue because they are so flexible that they can't properly express force from the end ranges, meaning they just kind of flop around. So they have a hard time coming out of positions, and when entering positions, there's little control. So that's what they mean largely, and they need now to develop the strength to practice control in these deeper positions. Another one, or tough variation, but one of my favorites, is yes, lunge, but heel to butt. The more you can squeeze your tush while bending the knee, the better, because that is going to help tremendously in getting your hips lower, especially if you've been training front splits in a while and you can't seem to get those last couple of inches. Is the back leg hip is hovering over the floor, but your front hip is on the floor. Yeah, it's that. And also for standing splits, which can happen front, side, or back. The more you can contract your glutes, the stronger your behind, the higher the extension. Because this is what happens too. People will have a flat split on the floor, but ask their hip extension to do that without the floor. What do you think is going to happen? They're not going to get their leg as high. They haven't conditioned their tissues to express force without the floor. So that's why it's pretty important to have a strong behind, especially if you want to do the penché. You know, the classic penché where you're like next to your standing side and you try to lift your back leg as high as possible. And I'm not even that warm. I'm not warm at all. My hamstrings, I did RDLs today, woof, they're cooked. If I did some oversplits before this live, and I haven't been stretching like that, but because my glutes are stronger, I could just hit those positions cold. This is how important strength training is through a flexibility lens. You will lose flexibility if you don't stick to it. This is true, okay? I get asked a lot, what happens if I start lifting? What happens to my flexibility? Well, if you stop stretching and just keep lifting, yeah, you're going to lose your flexibility. You have to keep at it. But this is why important that you consider stretching with your weights or aiming to move through a fuller range of motion with your weight training. And you might discover having to go lighter in certain exercises, right? Because with the bigger compound movements, people tend to go heavier because, you know, if you want to horse big weight around, the range of motion is going to be moderate or, unfortunately, sometimes, in some cases, too short. If you try to go sneaks to cheeks in your squats and you haven't taught your knees and ankles to express force from those deeper positions with that same amount of load, yeah, you're going to get hurt. So that's why you might have to lighten the load. This is as an example, right? So let's say you were squatting 215, but you were only going parallel in the back squat, right? So you're only going here. The minute you go here, you're not going to get up. You probably won't be able to go as low. So you probably have to go down to 135 and practice with that new weight and work your way up to 215 again, but going all the way down. That's going to take time. But I'm telling you, it is worth it. It's worth it. That transfers over. And I showed you again. I'll show you again with my Zerchers that I love to do with weight. Now, I have RDL'd 215 for like 8 reps. And I do it on a deficit, so I'm on a platform, right? I'm still getting a nice stretch in the hamstrings, still getting a nice stretch in the back too because I'm going below parallel. Where is it? Where is it? Let me find it. Is this it? Yes. Okay, so now I only have 95 pounds on the bar. But because I'm keeping my legs completely straight, that's going to be a lot different than keeping my knees soft, which is what I usually do in a conventional RDL. But now that I'm keeping my legs straight, I'm basically doing a loaded forward fold. But here's the difference. I got to get back up. So I have to teach my, here's the AI again. I have to teach my hamstrings to now generate strength from my end position. So at the bottom of the forward fold, I'm teaching them to say, hey, get back up and not and not get stuck down there. Eventually, I will love to do that with 215. That will be S tier, okay? Ooh, my hamstrings will be shellacked, but I have to work towards it, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with slowly working towards that goal. But what do I gain along the way? Not only flexible hamstrings, but strong flexible hamstrings. And I can even work on increasing the incline of that platform. Whew. Julie, I would say start with either like a light barbell or even dumbbells. You could do dumbbells too. But it's really good because when you have weight, especially elevated, your hamstrings have no choice to stretch. Also, I wanted to demonstrate, if you wanted to try those, you could go down, bend, and then roll back up. If you had dumbbells, you go as low as you can, bend, and roll back up. The roll back up will feel great on your back too, because you'll get a nice stretch in the spine. Yeah. So glutes play a huge role in flexibility training, because although I opened this discussion with back bends, like I had demonstrated with the low lunge, yes, Julie, they're locked going down. So that's why I would try lightweight first to get accustomed to that feeling, because, ooh, is it a different feeling when you add weight. But the backs of your knees will get strong from that, for sure. Although I opened this discussion with back bends, your tush squeezes in front splits. What about middle splits, though? Middle splits, not quite the same because of the hips position. So with straddle, they're actually lengthening. Well, they're kind of doing a little bit of both. So with straddle, people feel that their glutes are holding them back from flexing. So yeah, now this is a totally different requirement from your glutes when it comes to straddle, and completely different when it comes to middle splits. You're not shortening your glute tissue in middles and straddles. You're lengthening while contracting. So that's why when you apply pails and rails or using the isometric loading to increase your range of motion, and I do this on the app where I lead the class through what is called pails and rails, that stands for progressive and regressive angular isometric loading in butterfly, where the first part of the contraction is like you want to squeeze your knees to the floor, and the second part is when you want to contract the glutes as if you want to lift the knees up away from the floor. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling, but boy, does that get your capsule, your hip capsules, hecka strong. Especially if you then ramp up to like that max effort, which takes time. If it's your first time practicing isometrics while stretching, you might have to slowly work on increasing your effort from 50% to 60 to 70, so on and so forth. But that's what's going to help open the hip, is to teach your capsules to now express force in that end range. Because why? If you wanted to do a straddle jump, if you wanted to do like the slide out, slide in, have you seen that when people like slide out, slide in middle splits? That's why it's great to, again, get the glute strong, shortened, lengthened, and isometrically. That's going to be a more holistic approach to your flexibility training, especially if you do both equally, more or less. So this is where I like to reserve a little bit of time at the end of our lives for questions pertaining to this topic if possible. More general flexibility questions, if I'm able to answer, I'll be happy to. But I'm happy that we were able to cover this discussion because there might be some confusion still floating around. And in short, yeah, it's good to have strong glutes for flexibility training because I categorize flexibility training like the big four: the back bends, low back specifically, shoulders, front split, middle split. Maybe there's a fifth one. But that's how I think about it, right? They all are connected. The splits and the back bends, anyway, are connected with the low spine glute effort. The back bends, they come from here. They come from the hips. When I took a contortionist workshop years ago with Mongolian contortionists, like actual Mongolian contortionists, you know what they started with? Sorry about the outside automobile noises. You know what they started with before we even got into the deep back bend work? They started with splits. And with that back hip, driving that glute down and forward to get that hip crease flat to the floor. What do you think needs to touch the floor with an oversplit when your legs are elevated, but your hips still have to touch the floor? Your hips your tush needs to drive down and forward. That's the sensation you want to feel. And when you get into your backdrops and your waterfalls and coming back up, then you're connected to that effort and you feel what your glutes need to do in order for you to go up and down. I do, Julie, and you can direct message me on my account if you would like to learn more. Yes, Mrs. Mendoza, we have our app that you can grab the link from Stretch It App's bio page and you'll be issued a free trial. So just make sure, because with free trials and apps and all that, they do ask for your credit card number because after the trial ends, they'll charge you right away. So just make sure if you're not enjoying the app that you set an alarm for yourself to cancel the subscription before you do get charged. I'm happy to hear that. And if you're watching the replay, I'm just hanging out, looking at the screen, seeing if anyone dropping questions per my request. You're like, why is she not saying anything? That's why. Also, if you're just joining and you missed the live, it will be on our main feed. So make sure you check out the replay so you could see it from beginning to end. Thank you so much for coming in. And make sure you join us for next Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll have our reminder up in stories so that you have an idea of what the topic will be for that Sunday. Is that it, family? We got like a minute left. in case you had any questions about what we talked about today. Okie dokie. Well, if that's it, family, thank you so much for carving out the time to join our live. And for those who continually visit us, we appreciate it. There's not a specific... Oh, I was referring to the fact that the workshop I attended with Mongolian contortionists, they start with front splits before they start back bends. That's how they do it, but it really is all up to what feels best to your body. It's just a natural progression, because if you work on your hip extension first, then you're more connected to the hip extension effort when it comes to your deeper back bend works. But some people might start with upper back and middle back because that is a stickier part of their body they need to address first. So it really all depends. Yes, so make sure, family, that if you want a free class on us, that you direct message the account the word live, LIVE, for your free class. Middle Splits Challenge starts tomorrow on the app. And if you want to check out the app, the free trial, you could also find that link in bio. And make sure you're around for next Sunday, as we will cover another flexibility topic. Thank you always. Thank you, Benny Ninja, always for taking the time to come by. And yes, always a pleasure with you, family. Hope to see you again soon.